Disclaimer. To the Pharisees and Karens out there.
How dare you?
All guests on this show do not reflect the opinions of the host. The purpose of this show is to have interesting conversations, stretch our minds, and grow.
Not what we want.
If you are looking for an echo chamber, viewer and listener discretion
is advised.
You talk about extreme.
If knowledge is a crime, we were guilty from the start. They don't fear the questions, they fear the spark. So we steal the fire, not to rule, not to reign, just to see through smoke and mirrors and call the beast by name. They call it dangerous thinking, they call it heresy. But fire doesn't fear the dark, it only shows what's real.
Hey guys, what is happening and what is up? Hold out that glass because you know what time it is. We about to fill it up. Welcome to the Prometheus Lens Podcast, the place where the conversations are always enlightening. I'm your host, Doc Brown, and here we like to use the allegory of the Prometheus Lens to take a second look at everything. Hey, you know the deal. If you're new to the channel, welcome to the hero's journey. Be sure to hit that like button and smash that subscribe button. And while I got your attention, hey, please check out this banner down below with all of our social medias at their various platforms. That would be much, much appreciated. Now, guys, I got a great out-of-the-box conversation for you today. Got one of my good friends and fellow podcaster. You have seen him on the show, so he's a returning guest, but I'd like to welcome back to the show Brad Lail from the Awakened Podcast. Brad, thank you for joining us again, brother.
Man, thank you for having me on. I appreciate it. You got such a great audience. Every time I come on, dude, I get people who come and listen to my show, and they're like, they'll send me messages and they say, hey, I came from Doc's show. And so, like, we're in the lineup now, man, and I feel honored to be a part of the lineup with you and Nephilim Death Squad and Tinfoil Hat and people like that, you know. So awesome to be on, man. Thank you for having me.
No, man, I appreciate you taking the time to come and spend it with me. I was just thinking, I mean, you were texting one day, and I was like, man, I haven't talked to Brad and had him on the show in probably 6 months or more. I was like, I need to get him on the show. And so I texted you, and I'm like, hey, man, you got any cool theories that you want to dive into and come back on the show? And you're like, maybe a couple. So you threw some ideas at me. I was like, let's do it, man. So I'm excited to sit down and let you just rip at it, man. Let me know what you've been up to, what you've been studying, and all that kind of stuff. But before I get ahead of myself, I tend to do that just in case there is a new listener or watcher and they didn't catch your previous show or know who you are. Just, give everybody a little synopsis, who you are, what you do about your show, just kind of introduce yourself to those new listeners.
Yeah, so again, my name is Brad Lail. I'm the host of the Awakened Podcast, and it started off as like I didn't really know what the direction of the show was. I did my first show ever was on the Confessionals with Tony Merkel, and he asked me after the show, what is it going to be about? And I said, I don't know. I mean, kind of paranormal, kind of like electromagnetic energy. I didn't really have a direction. I just wanted to kind of get some of my ideas out there about the 33rd parallel, and that looking more into the 33rd parallel led me down the road of discovering something that I think is very important in the paranormal world. And it's very important in, I guess, not just the paranormal world, but all of this stuff we talk about, all this conspiracy, paranormal, it all ties in. It's all spiritual. There's a layer of reality that is sort of overlaying on this world. The Saturnian overlay is what Topher Gardner calls it. And I think that everything conspiracy, paranormal, and spirituality is all connected. And that's kind of where this show has been going. So I talk about everything from, like, I talk about science, and I know that's like a nasty word for people who are very religious like you and I and other people who listen to the show. But like I was just saying about the Saturnian overlay, it's like the devil's overlay. He corrupts everything. He takes everybody's creations. He takes God's creations especially. So anytime you say the word science, I'm actually I'm using a word that everybody knows rather than trying to create a new word for it, because that's the word that everybody knows. And people who are in like the religious world, we like to pick and choose what we believe in science, and we don't like to, we kind of like, for example, flat Earth and all that stuff. Like we'll say we believe in flat Earth, but then we won't provide a better explanation. And so all of the things that I'm getting into, I'm trying to provide a Christian worldview on something that is scientific, if that makes any sense. So if we're talking about fallen angels, I want to describe where these fallen angels are coming from, that kind of stuff. Like it's not good enough for me to just say, okay, they're fallen angels. I want to know more. Like when we see them, what form are they taking and how are they taking it? So where does the spiritual and how does the spiritual become the physical? And so those are some of the things I talk about on my show. And so it's really a mixed bag. Like I went on JT Follows JC's show, and a lot of people who listen to his show are biblical cosmologists, and they have very firm views about flat Earth and things like that. And I think my whole purpose is to just try to bridge the gap between spirituality and science, and let people know that the words that science people are using has basically been hijacked by the devil. So, or they're God's creation that's been hijacked by the devil. So everything on this show, man, it's like paranormal to ley lines to electromagnetic energy to UAPs and plasma and all kinds of different things. That's what I talked about the last time on your show was plasma portals. And again, it all started with the 33rd parallel, which is a ley line, which is basically this heavier than normal electromagnetic energy that happens within certain regions of Earth. And that led me down to the path of what I'm going to be talking about today, which is the Betty and Barney Hill story. I'm also going to be talking about the Lizard Man of Scapeore Swamp, and I'm also going to be talking about the Travis Walton story, which he was abducted out of Arizona. And I know everybody's heard those stories. Those are very famous stories, but what I want to get into today is more so the environmental profile of those areas. What is the magnetic field like in these different areas of Earth? And it's something that nobody's ever talked about. But I feel like it's very important because lots of paranormal shows talk about the Betty and Barney Hill story. You've heard Rogan talk about it. But again, let's dissect the area that they were actually abducted from, because I think it's a very, very important topic. But I don't want to get too far. I know I kind of did a long little intro there. But yeah, you guys can find me at theawakenpodcast.com. That's where you can find all my links to my show. And this is the kind of stuff I talk about. This is the kind of stuff that interests me. So.
Oh, yeah, man. That's why my listeners come in pocket with you so well, because we like these subjects too, man. And I've said it many times. I even said it in my book. I don't think that science and faith has to be like this hardline thing. My opinion is a lot of times terms in science and stuff like that correlate with the Bible and supernatural things, but it's just man's way of trying to explain and better understand, an infinite being. A lot of people will complain about some people that are more science-minded. They'll talk about, like the Red Sea crossing, for instance, and they'll be like, oh, well, and I'm just throwing this out, so don't take my word for it, like on the specifics, but I'm just giving like an example here, hypothetical. Oh, there's a ley line or a fault line right there, and at certain times of the year, it's more friction, and if there was an earthquake and a strong wind come through, like it says, this would have caused the water to part. Or I've heard when the sea turned to blood in Exodus, at certain times of the year, there's this algae that's there, and that causes the water to turn red, and that upsets a lot of Christians, because they're like, oh, you're trying to desupernaturalize the Bible or diminish God. And I'm like, well, God created the universe. He created all the elements in it. I don't think it's out of the question to say that he would use the elements that he created in this sphere. So that's just kind of like my take on it too, man. But no, I'm excited to hear what you have found, especially with these events. And if you don't care, give just a little explanation of what they are, instead of, like, you don't have to go in depth, but just in case somebody's not familiar with those stories. But yeah, man, take it away.
Yeah, I mean, you were just talking about fault lines, right? And that's kind of what I'm talking about. It's like we are in a physical reality, so we have to look at the physical things that are happening and say, that's what it is. Right? And we have to unfortunately use the scientific words that they give us. Like we use the word atoms and electrons and these kinds of things. I don't know if all those words were corrupted or hijacked over time, but I'm not arguing over that. Like people really have a tough time when I say I don't think that the shape of Earth really matters to me. I'm just trying to explain energies and things that are definitely occurring, right? Because I can't see the shape of Earth, so I don't know if it's flat or if it's round. I actually personally think we're in some sort of a, not a holographic reality, but more like a toroidal Earth, and there's an axis of symmetry, this plane of existence that we live on. But that's just my personal opinion. But I think everything in this world is very energetic, and you were just talking about the fault lines, and those are clearly happening. Volcanoes really happen, like you can clearly see this stuff. Mm-hmm. Earthquakes really are happening. And that is super important to the discussion. And I think, again, we kind of left off on some of this stuff the last conversation we had. But a lot of paranormal things happen in highly magnetically anomalous areas of Earth, almost always. And so that was one thing I started noticing. A long time ago, I used to watch these like Ancient Aliens, and I would watch, all these different shows, Skinwalker Ranch, because I was like Johnny Five, right? I need more input. I was looking for things on TV that could give me like some little clues.
I love that reference, by the way.
Yeah, yeah.
Johnny number 5.
Circuit, baby. But yeah, I was looking for little clues that I just wanted to learn. I was trying to absorb information. And so I wasn't watching these shows as like a serious thing. I was watching it for like, where's this location? This is how I learned about Pumapunku and Teotihuacan and Sacsayhuaman and all these other different places. So I was looking for information like that. I didn't care about the guy with crazy hair on Ancient Aliens, and I didn't care about Travis Taylor on Skinwalker Ranch, and none of those kind of people, none of those characters. I know it's all a show. I do marketing for a living, so I totally get it. But I was definitely pulling things out. And this is kind of where I started forming my opinion about the 33rd parallel and some other stuff. And I would watch shows like Skinwalker Ranch, and they're doing all these alleged scientific things, right? And I could clearly see, because I'm very good with like recognizing patterns, and I could clearly see, well, they're not doing this. Like, for example, they would say, man, our compasses is going crazy on this spectrometer analysis thing, or whatever they're saying, you know what I mean? And I go, but why aren't you examining the electromagnetic energy that, so like they're doing these fake experiments, and they're not going any farther. And by the way, that was a Travis Taylor impression, not, somebody else. That's not like a dumb redneck impression. That's just how Travis Taylor sounds. But
hey, I resemble that remark.
Yeah, me too. I'm from South Carolina, dude. So, but yeah, like I said, man, I was noticing that they weren't doing, and I was noticing what people are not talking about. For example, the
whys.
What?
The whys. That's what's important.
A lot more than that too, man. But like, if you look at the disclosure hearing since 2017, they're not talking about nothing. By the way, disclosure, a synonym for disclosure is revelation. So it's a very interesting word that they use, disclosure. But since 2017, I was kind of like into all this paranormal stuff, but I would never hear anything out of these briefings to Congress, right? So I would sit there and watch a couple of them, and I didn't really watch all of them, honestly, if I'm being honest, because I just realized that they're not saying anything. It was just a bunch of like, for example, they would have whistleblowers on from like, it was always national security type people. It was always DOJ or, DOD or NSA or those kinds of people. And I was in the military. I know that is a very heavily focused national security interest topic. But that was the only thing that they were talking about. And so I was like, but...
Did you feel that was like those shows too? Because that's kind of the feeling that I got. When I was watching that disclosure stuff, I was like, to me, it was like, what's that called? The Treasure Island. What's that called?
Yeah. The search for...
You know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about. They never find anything.
The Templar treasure.
Yeah.
They never find anything. And the Bigfoot movies and just all these shows that go after monsters and these, wild things. They make you think that they got something great to show you, and they made this discovery, and they get you to watch for hours, and they never find anything.
Well, sorry, I was just coughing. But, yeah, that's the same thing. I'm sitting there watching them, and I'm wanting more. I remember doing this with, like, when all these social media companies were testifying in front of Congress, and I do marketing for a living, so I know this stuff better than anybody. And nobody in Congress is asking them the right questions. And it was just a show. And I saw that in the military as well. But so I'm sitting there watching the disclosure hearings, and they're like, this thing is anomalous. This thing is unidentified anomalous phenomena. And it's happening over nuclear facilities. And I go, okay, well, where's the Department of Energy? Where's the Department of Interior? Why aren't they answering those questions? And so I would notice everything that was missing from the equation rather than just watching it with like, oh, this is crazy. They're just telling us. Because all of these DOD people, by the way, you can hear them during these disclosure briefings. They're always like, well, I know a guy who knows a guy who was in the crash retrieval program. It's like, so if you can watch these things with a critical thinking, a free thinking mind, you can kind of zoom out and you can kind of see all the pieces to the puzzle that's missing. And then those are the questions I'm trying to answer. Those are the things I'm trying to look into, because if they're not telling us something, then that means that we need to be looking there. So if everybody's swimming this way, I need to be swimming this way. You know what I mean? Yeah. And again, nobody's talking to the Department of Energy. The Department of Energy handles all things plasma and anomalies and anything related to atmospheric conditions and those kinds of things. And then the Department of Interior handles all things volcanoes and fault lines and coastlines and things like that. So you're thinking, anything that has to do with the earth, any ground, anything. And both of these departments have different levels of classification. Like they have their own, like I believe the Department of Energy has a Q level classification. Like in the military, everybody gets like a top secret clearance, and then there's top secret compartmentalized, and then there's like special access programs and all this. Well, these, sorry, my phone keeps going off over here. But so these different departments have their own classifications, and you would think that everybody in the government has the same classification levels. Well, the Department of Energy is a totally different thing. And there was this thing in the 1947, I believe, the Department of Energy I forgot what it used to be called, but they basically made it illegal for anybody to disclose anything about the Department of Energy, meaning you will literally go to jail. And this happened in 1947, and it's pretty much stuck. And so I think that people are afraid to bring these people in front of Congress because they have all the answers to all of these different things. Think about like swamp gas. Remember the story about the ladies in Michigan or Indiana? I can't remember. It was two young girls, college girls, and the U.S. government was saying it's swamp gas. And it's a famous story. I can't remember the story exactly, but so the government was telling us what it was, but we just weren't believing them. They were saying it's swamp gas. And we were like, no, it's got to be aliens. And nobody ever connected the two. And again, that's what I'm kind of looking at is like, well, let's go investigate this swamp gas case and try to figure out what the government was trying to tell us here. They used to say the same thing about Roswell. It's weather balloons. It's, those kinds of things. And so if you can go to those stories and re-examine those stories and look at what the government's saying, you may be able to find some sort of a synonym or something that you can look at, some sort of a thread you can pull on to get you down the path of something else. And that's kind of what I did with this Betty and Barney Hill story and the Travis Walton story and also the Lizard Man story. And I did 2 episodes already on Betty and Barney Hill and then one on the Lizard Man, but I haven't done one on Travis Walton yet. But for those who don't know...
this Betty Hill, what's that story?
Yeah, so the Betty and Barney Hill story is like this couple from Portsmouth, New Hampshire. They were going to Niagara Falls for their honeymoon, and they decided to return home from Montreal, Canada, back home. And so on September 19th, 1961, which was like the last night of their trip, when they were on the way back from Portsmouth, they stopped at a diner in Vermont around 10 p.m. and they start making their way back home through the White Mountains on US Route 3. They eventually started getting followed by these lights while they got through this region. And they got their binoculars out while they were driving, and Betty was like looking through the binoculars, and she could see that this thing was like swerving in and out of the roads and in the trees and the mountains, following them. And Barney used to be in the military, so he thought it was just a commercial plane or some kind of a helicopter. They didn't really know what it was, but they decided to just keep driving. Well, a little bit later, the light appeared, and once they got around this area called Cannon Mountain, and this Cannon Mountain it used to have this face on the mountain called Old Man Mountain, but has since fallen off. So it looked like the face of a giant on the side of this mountain. So it was in like Franconia Notch, I believe was the area was called, and Cannon Mountain is in Franconia Watch. And once they got to US Route 3, which is in Lincoln, New Hampshire, the object reappeared and it hovered about 100 feet over their car. And it descended towards their car very fast, which made Barney stop in the middle of the highway. He grabbed his binoculars again, got out the car. He also grabbed a pistol, and he saw a craft that was as big as an aircraft, but it was as flat as a pancake. And he also saw approximately 10 gray beings looking at him through the window. These beings telepathically told him to put down the binoculars. As the craft got closer, these telescoping arms appeared from the side of it. Barney tried to raise his pistol, but he couldn't. He was kind of frozen in place, but he was fearful of like abduction. And all of a sudden, he got control of his body again, so he ran and he jumped back in his car. Well, as Betty and Barney was trying to escape, they started hearing these like beeping noises from the trunk of their car, and then they started feeling drowsy. Eventually, they lost consciousness. When they woke up, they were near Concord, New Hampshire. And it was now dawn. So this was around 10 o'clock when all this was going on. And now it's almost in the morning, when they kind of come back to their consciousness. So they were missing about 7 hours.
They lost about 6 hours.
Yeah, about 6 or 7 hours of time. And they had no memory of what happened after the beeping noise in the trunk of their car. But they could remember up to that. So they do remember like seeing these lights and seeing these beings and all this other stuff. Now, when they got back to their home in Portsmouth, New Hampshire, they began doing these weird things. Like they started putting their luggage at the back door. They were checking their privates, and they were taking showers a lot, and they didn't really know why. They just were taking a lot of showers. They were doing odd things, and they were examining each other. And Barney's shoes were scuffed. His binocular strap was broken. Betty's dress was torn, and it had a hole in the center of the chest area, and there was this pinkish powder that was on it, and both of their watches had stopped working. So they both were spending a lot of time trying to figure out exactly what had happened the night before. That same day, which was September 20th, 1961, Betty filed a report with the UFO investigation team, known at the time as Project Blue Book. She was also following it with another company. I can't remember the name of the organization, but I can't remember the organization.
Was MUFON around then?
No, it was a different one. It was like, I can't remember, man. It'll come to me in a minute. But when she reported this to Project Blue Book, she told them that she was concerned about radiation. And the reason they were concerned about radiation was because of the pinkish powder. And also on the back of their car, on the trunk of their car, there was these concentric circles. And anytime they had a compass, anytime they get near the car, the compass would go crazy. Anytime they would get near their clothes, the compass would go crazy. So they thought they were poisoned with some sort of a radiation. Well, 10 days after the event, Betty started having these disturbing dreams about what happened that night. In the dreams, she recalled her and Barney being basically led through this forest after they were abducted by these 5-foot-tall human-looking beings. They had black hair, they had grayish skin and dark eyes. And she said that they were wearing these matching bluish military uniforms and caps, right? They look like cadets in some ways, how she described them. And they encouraged her to watch them, do all these different things. They even, after they dropped her off, they encouraged her to watch them take off. So it was like a show for them. They were telling her, watch this, hey, check this out, all this other stuff. So Barney he was in this trance, like he was sleepwalking. Now this was her dream. So she was remembering, she was seeing all this stuff happen in her dreams, right? Now, so she didn't have any real memory of the abduction itself. She was basically being shown the craft. She was being shown this fiery orb. She could see Barney walk, like sleepwalking in the trance back to the car and all this other stuff. So there was parts of her dreams that obviously were missing. They didn't have any memory of being actually on the craft. So obviously Barney thought that her dream was basically nonsense, and she didn't. She spent a lot of time in the library reading about these different things, and she discovered the National Investigations Committee of Aerial Phenomena, which is called the NICAP. Now, the word aerial phenomena existed back in the 40s. Like we think that that's like a new term, but that's not actually a new term. We've been calling them UFO. We've been calling them aliens because those are the words that we've been trained to think because of movies and television shows and pulp fiction novels and comic books and all this other stuff. So the NICAP was this civilian UFO group, and I think it was Barney who actually filed the report just to kind of shut up his wife. He was like, all right, fine, I'll file this report. And they ended up filing the report on October 21st. So we're now about a month after the event happened. And they started seeing a psychiatrist named Benjamin Simon to basically help them piece together what had happened that night. Because at this point, Barney's like, okay, maybe I'm convinced a little bit. Betty's sister actually had a lot of crazy experiences with UFOs as well. So Dr. Simon performed regression hypnotherapy, and he basically used hypnosis to guide them back to these past experiences to try to uncover these root causes of their past trauma. And so he was thinking that they were just going to, like it was just going to be like a car accident or something like that. But when under hypnosis, Barney and Betty, and these are famous recordings, they're all out there online that you can actually listen to. They're screaming, and they're talking about these horrific things that happen to them when they're on the table. I mean, Betty was getting injected with a needle into her stomach. Things were being cut off of Barney's testicles in privates and stuff like that. There was a lot of weird things that were going on. And they basically go through this hypnotic regression, and they're describing all these horrific things and how these beings told them they were from this Zeta Reticuli planet, which is a thing that they always do. They always say that we're friendly beings from the Zeta Reticuli star planet or whatever. And they showed Betty a map, and they tried to make it. They basically convinced Betty that they were good, but Barney, in these recordings that the regressive hypnotherapy was recording, he was the one who was screaming and crying. He was in fear for his life, and she wasn't. And they don't really know why. They just assume that maybe she was more comfortable to the idea that aliens existed, those kinds of things. So they took clippings of their nails, these beings did. They took parts of their skin, like I mentioned, and they described that these beings put all their samples onto these glass slides of some sort. Long story short, I'm not kind of yada-yadaing over it. I feel like I'm just talking a lot about this right now without saying anything.
No, I'm glad you did, because I wasn't familiar with the story.
Well, again, Betty was looking at it as like a friendly interaction, and she became really obsessed with it and was basically saying, oh, they're good. These beings are good or what have you. But how good can beings be if they're taking things from your skin, abducting you, ripping your dress off, putting some, needles inside your stomach and all these other different things? And, famously in the UFO world, people who are abducted are impregnated and things like that. So what if they were impregnating her? So we're talking about, the R word, and we're talking about kidnapping, and we're talking about all kinds of different things against people's will. So how can that, by definition, be good? It doesn't make any sense to me. So when you hear people out there say, well, I had this encounter with this light being and it was really majestic and it was the archangel, whoever, saying, I'm here, I'm friendly. It's like, well, that's what the devil
Like
does.
a Bledsoe guy.
Yeah, he always disguises himself as an angel of light.
Most days don't look like an emergency. That's why most people never think about what they're carrying. We do. Because preparedness isn't about looking the part. It's about being ready anyway. Comfort isn't a luxury. It's what keeps you moving when the day goes longer than planned. That's why every Squatch survival pack is made here, start to finish. Squatch builds packs for people who don't assume the day will stay easy. Rougarou, Mothman, built to last your missions and be passed down when you're done. Squatch survival gear, ready for the next one.
So, anyways, their story got a lot of attention because they were a married older couple, not really too old, but in the 60s, a couple who was in their 30s or 40s. That's pretty much you're an old couple now. You're like old people, and they were just well dressed and well kept. I think Barney worked for the post office, and Betty was a volunteer, like doing nonprofit work. And so they were just like normal people. And that's what made their story so believable, was that whenever they tell it matter-of-factly. Plus the tapes, the recordings describing the horrors that they went through made it even more credible. So it's widely known as one of the most documented cases in history because, again, the NICAP, Project Blue Book, there was another organization, like I said, that was investigating it as well. And so there's tons of documentation on this. There's tons of recorded evidence of tape, talking about what they experienced and things like that. So there's corroborated evidence of the dress. There's corroborated evidence of the concentric circles on the car. So that's my point, is like it was a very credible encounter with these beings. I'll pause right there before we do like a environmental profile on the area if you want to ask some questions, but...
Oh, no, I'm good. That was going to be my next question. It was like, okay, well, I know you teed it up before you got into it, so I'm assuming that there is some anomalies with nature around this area, this mountain that you're talking about. Did you find it's kind of like similar to the 33rd parallel or some kind of fault line or something like that anyway?
Yeah, and thank you for mentioning that, because I need to kind of reset a little bit. The 33rd parallel, to me, over time, I used to think it was just a line. It used to be just 33.0 to 33.9, and anything outside of that, not the 33rd parallel. But I have come to understand that it's probably a region of Earth that is warmest, that is reacting to the sun in some way. The sun is a giant magnet, and so is Earth. And when two permanent magnets are interacting with each other, it creates electrical currents. And so I've expanded the line, the 33rd parallel line, to include basically everything from 33rd North to 33rd South, which is like South America. That line kind of goes over South America, like Zimbabwe. It goes over Australia, all these different regions, right? And that includes areas like Peru. And the reason I say that band, it's like a band, because that is the warmest region of Earth. That is where the sun interacts with Earth, like at its closest, right? It's where the warmest region is. And so, so the 33rd parallel to me is more or less like an area where there's a lot of fault lines and volcanoes and things, fissures, areas of Earth, cracks in the Earth where things can come out, where electrical energy can come out. And so anytime I say ley line, anytime I say telluric current, anytime I say 33rd parallel, those are all synonymous with each other. So they're all electromagnetic energy fields that are like, basically they're variables in the Earth's magnetic field. So what that means is Earth has a resonant frequency, as everybody knows, which means we have a static electromagnetic field. Any kind of magnetic anomalies in that region can cause variations in the magnetic field. What I actually think happens, it creates portals, because you're getting like electromagnetic energy that creates a field of energy that interacts with Earth's energy, and it creates like a separation, if you will, in the Earth's electrical and magnetic fields, and it creates almost like a portal of access. And so when you look at this region, and I have to like pull it up because I'm too stupid to like know these things like right off the top of my head, but essentially the white, matter of fact, let me just show you. Can I share my screen with you?
Yeah.
I want to show you guys something rather than just talk about it. I'll just show you, because it probably would be easier to visually show people. So for those who are listening, head on over to Doc's YouTube channel and check this out.
Yeah.
All right. So how do
Shameless plug.
yeah. How do I share this screen?
I'll be sure to be like, oh my gosh, you guys should see this.
Let me pull it up, man. Sorry. I'm on my laptop right now, which makes it very hard to pull up. I'll just pull up Betty and Barney Hill first. Okay, so what we're looking at now is, all I did was I went to Google Maps and I put a marker on the exact spot where Betty and Barney Hill was abducted, right? Or where they said that they were abducted. And what I did was, what you're seeing right now is a USGS aeromagnetic and gravity map. So what you're looking at is areas of New Hampshire that are highly magnetic, and the pink spots means highly magnetic. Okay, just think that. And so that is, in these areas in particular, you're causing what I think is a portal. You're causing a separation in the Earth's electric and magnetic fields, and it creates a little sliver of space that these things can come through. So can you see my mouse at all?
Yeah.
So my mouse, it focused on this area right here. Okay, this
It looks like there's like three little mounds right there, and you're like northwest of them.
Well, I will go over that in a minute, but right here, this little area, you see that pink little dot right there, and I overlaid this USGS map with the Google Maps screenshot that I took, and I just want to show you the, hopefully I don't mess this up, but, oh wait, it's not doing it. Maybe I got the wrong one selected, I'm sorry.
Oh yeah, you're going to transparent.
Yeah, so look, check this out.
Make it transparent.
You see that?
It's right there on that hot spot, ain't it?
Yeah, right on the hot spot. So all that means is that it's evidence. It's just one evidence. And you can do this for anybody who's a paranormal investigator. If you really care about paranormal stuff, start looking at these maps. Because I'm telling you, this is a big key to what's going on with these things. What we're seeing is anomalies. We're seeing energies, higher than normal energies, that are creating avenues for these, what I think are demons, to come into our reality from the dark matter in through gases that are trapped in magnetite. Now I know it's a mouthful, and I'll try to explain that as best I can, but it's essentially, long story short, I think these things, we are light beings. We are created in God's image. Therefore, we are light beings. We're human, Hueman, means we're color beings. We're light. And these things are basically the void. So we live in this little sliver of visible light on the electromagnetic spectrum that is 0.0035% of light. And then everything else is just darkness. So everything else is 99.965% is void. And that's where I think that these demons are sort of residing while in this physical reality. I think they reside in the void. And they find ways from the void, from the dark matter, to hitchhike their way into our reality. And they do that through noble gases. Noble gases are chemically inert. They have a solid electron outer shell. That means they can't be changed. And they enter through these noble gases. These noble gases are trapped in magnetite. Magnetite, when the sun and the earth are interacting with each other, creating that induction, it unlocks the magnetite, and releases these noble gases. These noble gases then interact with the plasma that's all around us, and then they come into our reality. And when they come into our reality, they have to interact with these magnetic field these anomalous areas to basically morph into an electromagnetic ball of energy, which is an orb or ball lightning or whatever you want to call it. So it's quite a journey for them to come into our reality through the noble gas that's trapped in the magnetite. And as the sun's going down and as the sun's coming up during the twilight area, parts of the day, that's why they call it twilight, the twilight zone. That's their moment. That's their only time to come into our reality, because the sun is heating up the plasma in our atmosphere, and it's causing these anomalous plasmas to form. It's causing these complex plasmas to form. And these gases attach themselves to the complex plasma. And then there's a famous video with Jeremy Corbell shared about the, what is it called? The jellyfish UFO.
Oh yeah.
What you're looking at, you can't see it with your naked eye. What you're looking at in that video, I think, is a complex plasma. And that is basically a big glob of intelligence. And it's flying around and it's looking for a magnetic field to interact with. Those magnetic fields are found in these magnetically anomalous areas like I just showed you on the Betty and Barney Hill map. So any area that has pink spots on the USGS maps, that's likely where you're going to have a lot of paranormal activity. So if you're a paranormal investigator and you want to go to a spot, find these areas on these maps and go and try to find a stream, flowing water, find fault lines, find extinct volcanoes, all that kind of stuff, and you're gonna be basically right on top of like some highly anomalous activity. And there's other things that you could probably do, which I don't recommend. You and I talked about it last time, building stone circles. I don't recommend necromancy at all. I'm not saying that, but that's essentially why these people are building stone circles, is because they're trying to entrap that
energy,
that magnetic field energy into one little area, because the magnetic field is not these little vortices of energy, they're not sitting in one space, because you got air that's pushing it around.
Dancing around sporadically.
It's kind of dancing around. And so when you create a stone circle, you're hyper focusing that into one little region, and that's where these things can come into those little circles and appear into reality. So
like a ghost trap, kind of.
It really is. It's like,
and it kind of correlates too with your theory, because all people's experience about losing electronics, batteries suddenly going dead, and things like that, because they're basically energy vampires. They need it to travel or manifest.
Yes, they do. They need it to come into our physical reality. And so if you're like on Skinwalker Ranch, they always have their electronics going crazy, like their phones are going crazy. Well, that's because they're entering into a magnetic field, essentially. It's almost always going to be at nighttime or at dusk or at dawn, because so if you're hunting these things, go when the sun's coming down, or when the sun's going down and when it's coming up. Those are the liminal spaces of reality. That's why people who go and hunt deer have these crazy, they don't know how to describe their feeling of sitting in a deer stand, because it's a weird liminal space where you're entering, I think, like a transformative period of Earth. I think it's possibly a little season that happens every day. But that's a whole nother topic. I don't want to go down that rabbit hole. But essentially, man, like with the Betty and Barney Hill stuff, like, let me just describe some of this stuff here. So the White Mountains, which is the mountain that it's on top of, and I mentioned Cannon Mountain. Well, all of it's part of the Appalachian Mountains. It's a sub-range of the Appalachian Mountains. And White Mountains is where this happened at. The highest peak in Mount Washington, which is the top of the mountain. There's a range of mountains there that are named after the presidents. And Mount Washington is the area closest to where this happened at. And it's about 6,288 feet. And the White Mountains is composed mostly of granite. And granite is piezoelectric because it contains quartz. Granite was found in the King's Chamber of the Great Pyramids. So these piezoelectric materials create an electric charge when mechanically stressed. So think about this. You're creating. So not only is there magnetic anomalies underneath Earth. When I'm saying magnetic anomalies, that means that there are former volcanoes and all these things that are happening deep beneath the Earth, and it's causing variable activity on Earth's surface or in the crust as well. And so you think about this. You're creating almost a perfect storm because the granite that's in the mountains can create electricity on its own. And also, the White Mountains is composed of metamorphic rocks. And magnetite is very common. It's a very common mineral in metamorphic rocks. It's a common mineral in almost every type of rock, sedimentary and all that stuff. But it's very common in metamorphic rock. So anywhere that there's magnetite, you're going to have a lot of magnetically anomalous regions of that area, okay? And again, so on the surface, you got granite that's creating electricity. You got deep below the surface is creating magnetic anomalies. And then you have rivers and streams and everything that's forming right at the junction of where they got abducted. There's geological, there's these geological features there, like these faults, like I said, fissures, these gorges, there's volcanoes, there's extinct volcanoes, and there's a place called Flume Gorge, and there's also flowing water systems. And I was just talking about that, how the rivers and streams kind of meet up all in this one little area where they got abducted. So we're creating a perfect storm is what I'm trying to get at of this abduction. You have piezoelectricity from granite. You have flowing water, which creates an electrokinetic field on its own. So flowing water creates a magnetic field by itself. So anytime you have flowing water nearby, power lines, anytime you have granite and those kinds of things, and then couple that with on top of a magnetic field, I mean like a irregular magnetic field, you're going to get all kind of crazy things. So there's, anytime you have springs, brooks, gorges, like I said, waterfalls, spring water, groundwater, all that stuff, you're going to have a lot of activity. And so it's no wonder why all of these places are in national forest areas. And this is where the national forest is, where they got abducted at, was in the White Mountain National Forest area. And you can almost always see this, and I'm going to show you that when we talk about the Lizard Man, and I'll also show you that with Travis Walton. They're almost always near national forests or inside of national forests. And so I think our government is roping off these national forests because they're portal areas of Earth. Man, I'm saying a lot. But stop talking and let you ask some questions.
No, dude, I'm just sitting back and absorbing it all. But one thing that did spring to mind I wanted to ask you, and then you can continue. I don't want to hold you up. But I was talking to Dr. Greg Little, and I think I mentioned it to you last time. He kind of talks about some of the plasma stuff, too, with me on that last show. Which, one thing I was totally ignorant of until, like, maybe the past year, and forgive me if I'm mispronouncing this or mislabeling this, guys and gals, but I think they called it Geostorms or space weather, or something like that. But I know recently they started monitoring, recording, and documenting like solar flares and things like that off of the sun. And basically, you know, it's burning ball of gas, and every so often you could see like explosions happen, and it just sends this shock wave of radiation, and that, you know, causes basically like an EMP. It causes our electromagnetic stuff to mess up, and planes, their radars act funny, and it's all this different kind of stuff. I didn't know if maybe with all these rocks, and basically they're like magnetic sponges with these solar flares and stuff like that happening, if like now where they're peaking up and getting worse, if that would feed this system more and maybe cause some more anomalies. Like that would be interesting to take what you're doing, looking at the maps, but then also looking at the solar flare events and see if, at times when there's more activity of these solar flares, if that correlates at all to these locations.
Well, funny you mentioned that, I actually did an episode called Solar Cycles where I literally connect all of this. And I released that probably a month ago or so, I guess. And yeah, that's essentially what's going on. But there's a key aspect that nobody's talking about, again, with the solar cycle stuff. So yeah, everything you just said is correct. And I didn't listen to the episode with your guest. I don't know who. I probably need to talk to him actually. But essentially what happens is every 11 years we have a solar cycle. Every solar cycle lasts about 11 years. And the last one, in those solar cycles, we have what's called solar minimum, and then which is the beginning of a solar cycle, and then we have solar maximum, which is like midway through. It's about 5 or 6 years into the solar cycle. During solar maximum is when shit hits the fan. That's when things go crazy with anomalous activity. And you can historically see this on all these major events that have happened. Roswell, for example, was solar maximum. 9/11, solar maximum. Recently, in the most recent solar cycle we had was solar cycle 24, I believe, maybe 2025. Maybe 25. But the solar maximum happened 2024 and 2025. And so the start of it was November 2024. And when did we start getting all these plasma drones in the sky? November 2024. So the start of solar maximum started creating all this anomalous plasma in the sky, which is why we were all seeing those Jersey drones and those drones basically all over the place. It's why we were seeing the auroras lowered to a lower latitude, because what happens is the sun gets all twisted up and it flips its polarity. And whenever it flips its polarity, and this happens every solar maximum, it shoots coronal mass ejections. These solar flares basically these giant globs of plasma come flying at Earth. And so our magnetosphere, which is this shield, this firmament that's protecting us from the sun, it gets very weak and gets pressed on. And that plasma, that excess plasma, flows through the poles. It flows in through Aurora Borealis and Aurora Australis. So what you're getting is like a squish down. And this is why you could see the auroras in South America or Texas or whatever, or Hawaii. Typically, they're just kind of focused into the Arctic and the Antarctic. But we were seeing them in all these areas because that plasma compressed it. And when that happens, so it takes there's a whole process that the path of these solar flares goes to. But basically, there's these portals in the sky called X points. And then there's a flux transfer event that shoots it towards Earth. And then you have what's called Birkeland currents that shoot it down into Earth's atmosphere. And then you have these things called Peterson currents, which spread it out throughout the atmosphere. So when that happens, that plasma affects all the plasma that's in the ionosphere. And it causes a bunch of crazy things to happen. And all these little balls of light are shooting off. And what happens is they form into complex plasma. And that complex plasma finds magnetic fields and comes into our reality. And so literally there's a direct correlation with a lot of paranormal activity and solar flares. And so you can look back historically over time and see, you can track all this. Every time there's a solar maximum, you get a lot of heavy pressure from the sun, creates a lot of anomalous activity. What happened during Roswell, the 1947 event, that was a solar maximum, which I think it was one of the top 3 solar storms on record. It caused a lot of panic within the U.S. government, because this is when the National Security Act of 1947 was signed by President Truman. He basically was panicked. He got on the airplane. He got on the Sacred Cow, which used to be Air Force One, and he was flying all over the place. Well, he created the Department of Energy and all these other different programs, NSA, the FBI, the DOD, all these things. The National Emergency, there's like some national emergency organization they created. This is where the government went haywire, and they just broke it all this stuff down, and they compartmentalized everything into these different. They were like, okay, you're going to get this part, you're going to get this part, you're going to get this part. And so now our branches of government don't speak to each other, because this is why they call a TSSCI, which is a top secret compartmentalized security clearance. The C means compartmentalized. That means you and I can be working in the same office together, but not be able to talk to each other about what we're doing if we have a compartmentalized clearance. And so this is very fractalized, I guess you could say, for...
And I think that's on purpose. You know what,
of
Brad?
course.
That way the government, they get the talking points of all the different spheres, but those spheres are working independently and reporting to Big Brother, and Big Brother's putting the puzzle pieces together for the full picture.
Right. Somebody somewhere is working on this. They're putting the puzzle pieces together. But I think the secret to that is probably the Department of Energy. That's what I think. That's who I think is kind of overseeing everything, is the Department of Energy.
Like you said, I mean, if your theory holds correct, and I mean, it makes sense, because I mean, I even made that correlation with the solar flares, you know, and just by listening what you were saying. So I mean, it makes sense and ties together like a hand in glove.
Exactly.
And like I said, if it is, you know, factual, then yeah, the energy department's going to be the ground zero, because that's the fuel that these entities or extraterrestrial beings need.
Exactly.
That's their fuel.
It's exactly right, man. And so when people are, look, if you go and look at like CIA and all these different organizations, their number one concern is weather, essentially. They're concerned about cataclysms. And so it makes a lot of sense if you, by the way, 2000, 2001, like I said, was a solar maximum. 2012 was the next solar maximum. So remember, everybody was, 2012, the world's going to end in 2012. And then the next one after that, again, 2024. But during these solar minimum times, this is when the governments of the world get together, I think, collectively say, we have to reduce populations before the next solar maximum. The next solar maximum is 2036. And the next solar minimum is 2030. So this, again, Agenda 2030, everybody's starting to prepare. They're going to do the same thing. They're going to try to reduce populations before the next solar maximum. That's my theory on it, for real, is that I think that they are in fear that if there is a cataclysm that happens as a result of these solar flares, maybe the entire grid goes down. I think this happened in 1859 or 1857 with the Carrington event. I think that it caused this plasma storm that melted everything. I think this is where the connection to old world Tartaria and all this stuff comes from, and these melted buildings and all this, is because I think the plasma event that happened back then melted everything and wiped out a big chunk of the population. So I think they're trying to thin down the populations in preparation for the possibility that, well, if there is an end of the world type scenario, we don't want everybody fighting over resources and things like that. We don't want 8 billion people fighting over resources. So I think that there's
we only got enough for 3 billion on our ark. Okay. So if you're the 3 billionth and one, you better fight like the third monkey in line at Noah's Ark, man.
I think these things, I think cataclysms happen on a regular basis. I don't think that they're always global.
There's cycles.
Yeah, I don't think that there's always a global flood like happen. I think that's a whole nother avenue. I think that God does reset the earth when there's enough negative energy that's built up. And Uriel talks about this in the book of Enoch. He's describing this whole process to Enoch. And so I that's a whole nother path, but I do think that regular cataclysms happen on a global scale. In fact, in 2024, 2025, we started seeing what happened with the hurricane in North Carolina, the fires, the floods in Texas, all that stuff, all of that happened in 2024, 2025. And it seemed like it was more than normal because it was. There was a solar flare that was the biggest recorded ever that hit Earth just recently. You can actually look that up.
With the price of eggs and bread slowly approaching a day's wages, it's more important than ever than to secure the value of your dollar. One thing that has remained steady is gold and silver throughout the ages. Back in Roman times, a piece of gold would get you a toga. That's the equivalent of $3,000 today. That still remains true to this day. For a full suit, shoes, tie, you're looking at about $3,000 because gold and silver holds its value. So if you're tired of watching the value of your dollar go down every single day, it's time to get off your hands and make a move. I've recently teamed with Cornerstone Asset Metals. Reach out to those guys for all of your financial needs. It's time to trade in that forever devaluing dollar into hard assets that you can hold, like gold and silver. Be sure and check the link down in the description or the number on the screen. And hey, tell them Doc Brown sent you.
And so when that happens, I think it causes the Earth's crust to break and shift. And it causes these landslides, and it causes these floods, and it causes these earthquakes and all this other stuff that's going on. And so I think that they know that. I think that the government knows that these things are happening. They know that it causes anomalous activity. They know that it causes these end of the world looking type of things to happen, these floods or whatever. And I think that they're just, that's probably the biggest national security concern for them, I would imagine, is, well, if all the grid goes down, if an EMP happens and it shuts down, you got to think about Earth as everything in this world is electromagnetic. Everything. Yeah. I mean, even including us.
All our stuff is polluting it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's like, I think you hear about back in the past, people had like the Old Testament of the Bible, for instance, and these old myths and legends and stuff. You have so much supernatural stuff. I think because it wasn't so electromagnetically polluted. Now you got cameras, you got, phones, you got microwaves and just all this different, electrical stuff that is putting off this energy and just basically polluting the atmosphere and making a lot of static.
Well, dude, during these geostorms, that's what your friend called them. That's what they are. There's a bunch of names: solar storms, geostorms.
Yeah, I've heard space weather.
Yeah, space weather, whatever. Solar flares, coronal mass ejections. All that stuff means the same thing. But it's essentially Earth itself has a heartbeat. It has the Schumann resonance as a frequency. And everything that happens from the Earth's crust to the Earth's ionosphere is basically controlled by that frequency. So we have our brains are electrical, our hearts we're bioelectric beings. And so whenever something happens like this, it affects us as well. So a lot of people were having, during these solar maximums, a lot of people have migraines. Their third eye, their pineal gland is literally affected. So they are awakening more. So this would explain a lot of the great awakening feeling that everybody's getting in 2024, 2025. We feel like something's happening because these solar storms also create a fight or flight response within us that has us very fearful of something, like something's going to happen. It causes all kind of sleep disruptions. It causes crazy dreams, causes migraines, all kind of crazy stuff. And so these solar storms are a big deal. We just don't know about them. We're not being taught about them because I don't think they want us to freak out. They don't want us to panic every 11 years and start taking things off the shelves and all this other stuff. But these global elitists do have all this knowledge, and they're building bunkers and they're storing up batteries and all these other different things in preparation of some sort of an end time type event. Because they know two things. They know that, well, first of all, if if God's coming back, they're the first ones to go. So they don't know how to prepare for that. They're panicking about that. And also, if it is an end of the world type scenario, that means that they're getting all their supplies taken by us. They're going to be the first one's door we're knocking down to get all the stuff, because if they're hoarding up all this stuff, so they're more fearful, I think, of God's wrath and also of us when it comes to these solar cycles. So they really panic. And I think they are building breakaway civilizations, and I think that they are doing all these other crazy things, building underground cities and bunkers and all this other stuff in preparation for something major.
Oh yeah, 100%. I mean, even if you're not a conspiracy theorist and you're just a, straight-edged Christian that's rigid, that's not a conspiracy theorist. It's just you're a Bible-believing, reading Christian. The book of Revelation spells that out plainly. It says that the rulers of the world will hide themselves in the mountains. And it talks to you can even speculate and say that this new AI and cybernetics and CRISPR DNA splicing, all that kind of stuff plays into the ones who wish for death and seek death but shall not find it. That stuff's right there in your Bible.
So essentially, also what Uriel was saying during his conversation with Enoch is seeing all this crazy stuff happening on Earth. He's seeing the giants. He's witnessing the Nephilim that are killing and creating hybrids and just causing destruction and teaching forbidden knowledge. He sees all this going on, and he's asking Uriel, the archangel Uriel, hey, how come God is not punishing these things? And Uriel is essentially describing different layers of imprisonment for them on Earth. So he's basically saying that Earth is not this passive creation that just exists. It also serves as sort of a prison planet. And these beings, these fallen entities, are essentially the ones especially who rebelled against God, are punished to different layers of the earth. Azazel is punished in the crust of the earth. He's basically in the crust of the earth. Shemiaza is beneath the mountains. And then there are beings who are in the abyss. And then there are beings who are in Tartarus, which is worse than the abyss. And Enoch got to go and he got to witness all this. He got to see firsthand and experience, and he was terrified of basically Tartarus and the abyss, because he was like, whatever that is, I don't want to go back there. That's a terrible place. So Uriel is showing Enoch all these different levels of imprisonment. And he also describes this layer of imprisonment that is in the cosmos. And he doesn't name who's in the cosmos, and he doesn't name who's in Tartarus. But you would think that the two who rebelled against God, Shemiaza and Azazel, would be like in Tartarus, but they weren't. They were kind of imprisoned in the layers of earth. They were like in the crust, right? We're talking about fault lines, and we're talking about magnetite. Well, this is where they're imprisoned at. And what does he do with the Nephilim? Because they're not human and they're not angel, he basically imprisons them to be wandering spirits of the earth and have no rest. You get no rest for the wicked. And so what also happens, so all of these negative entities are still on earth right now. And also the spirits of the righteous are on earth as well. And Uriel talks about that with Enoch as well. He's like basically saying that the righteous spirits are resting in peace. They're in a peaceful place. They're almost like in a peaceful waiting room before they go to heaven. And what happens is God collectively judges everybody at the same time, all spirits. And so he waits until there's a buildup of negative energy. When it becomes too much, when the earth can't bear the energy any longer, they can't bear the negative energy any longer, it causes a cataclysm or a reset. And the righteous are the ones who petition on behalf of those who are being affected, the humans that are being affected in this current reality. So if Meemaw dies, your granddaddy dies, or whoever, hopefully they're in this waiting room petitioning on your behalf right now in this peaceful place, saying, all right, God, and it talks about this with Abel reaching out to God, right? Please provide punishment for these for earth right now, like provide punishment for these things. And that's what I think
Revelation
happens.
says the saints, are underneath the altar begging, how long before you avenge us?
Exactly.
And another thing too, a biblical theme that kind of echoes your theory there was Abraham. When God went to go destroy Sodom and Gomorrah, he was sitting there petitioning for the righteous. He's sitting there bargaining with God. He's like, would you destroy the city if there was, 20 righteous people? He's like, if there's 20, I won't do it. Well, what about 10? What about 5? Well, what if 2, Lord? What if 2? And he still ended up destroying it. So, that spoke a lot. There weren't even 2 righteous people found in that city, man.
Yeah, and what did Jesus say about this in Matthew 13? He's talking to his disciples, and they're like, what about the weeds? With the farmers, planting wheat, what about the weeds? And Jesus is like, let them grow alongside with the wheat. And then come time for the harvest, the angels will come and they'll throw the weeds, they'll pull them up at the same time, and they'll throw the weeds into the fire. Because I think he's saying, like, hey, live your life, don't worry about them, try to be righteous, do the right thing, and we'll take care of the bad beings, So I think that there is you can feel it now with these Epstein files that are coming out. I just feel like my heart is just reaching out to God, like, please do something here. Like, we can't let this.
It's a seed war. It's the wheat and tares, like you said, man. Yeah, they're amongst us, man.
Yeah, we need, you can almost feel it, man. You can feel the pulse of the world collectively coming together and saying, like, do something, please. It feels like even the righteous on earth are saying, and I'm not saying that I'm righteous. I'm not wholly righteous. I do bad things still.
Our righteousness is Christ.
Yeah, right. But I do think that there are a lot of people who are consciously reaching out to the Holy Spirit, because our consciousness is the Holy Spirit, if you ask me. And I think that we're collectively trying to say, like, please do something about this evil that's persistent on this earth. And so I think that, again, these government beings, these government entities, these government organizations, they know they are probably fearful that God's wrath is probably coming, I would imagine, soon. I'm not one of those end times, the end time is going to, like, I heard this thing with Chris Bledsoe, no disrespect to the guy whatsoever, but, the lady told him in April of 2026 or at Easter 2026, something major was going to happen. And then he said, well, but it could also be 2027. So these people keep kind of kicking the ball. The field goal keeps getting moved back a little bit further and further. Every time they miss, 2012 was going to happen, and then 2020, and then 2025, and they keep
88 reason Christ is going to return in 1988. And
so the point is like, the Earth is an active system of imprisonment for these beings, for these entities, and I think that they are kind of loosed, like almost they're loosed every day. You think of it like jail, like how prisoners get to go out and work out in the yard and play basketball.
Yeah, they get their yard time at dusk and dawn.
They get their yard time in. So I think the light rules the day, and the dark, the other light, the lesser light, rules the night. And that's what they say. And so this is why this ties back into what Vicky Joy talks about, where they come out at night. Well, they do come out at night because light will disperse them back to where they came from. And so they have this small window of time, just like with the Betty and Barney Hill abduction, to abduct them. And then what did I say about when did they wake up? Right at dawn, right? So they abduct them, and then before the sun comes back up, they got to go. They got to get it. So what they're trying to do, I think, is create hybrids to stay in this reality. They're trying to figure out how to stay on Earth. And I don't think they can figure it out.
Genesis 6, nothing new's under the sun,
Yeah.
And the UFO phenomenon, the whole hybridization program. And but you had also mentioned the Lizard Man. Now, where is that, and what is that?
So the Lizard Man's in Bishopville, South Carolina, which is about 35 minutes away from where I live now. And it's one of those, it's right on the 33rd parallel. It's one of those stories that are well known in paranormal lore. A lot of people from China and Japan and stuff come to this little podunk town in South Carolina just to kind of look around. They buy T-shirts. They go look at the museum and stuff like that because they want to try to get a taste of the Lizard Man. It's a very well-known story.
Like West Virginia's Mothman, right?
Yeah, it's pretty much like that, yeah. So anytime you hear Lizard Man, that's pretty much like the Mothman of South Carolina, if you will. Although there have been more paranormal type sightings of puckwudgies and things like that have becoming more well known. But everybody sees orbs, especially where I grew up. I grew up right in the middle of the national forest. Everybody sees orbs all the time. My mom has them in her backyard. Everybody has seen them. Everybody's interacting with them. My mom has had interactions with a UFO.
Yeah, you've actually sent me some of those videos of your mom filming them orbs. That's crazy. Lindsay, this girl that I dated for a little while, she would send me videos. And what's crazy, she was from Vermont.
Well, I think
and she'd have orbs in her backyard all the time.
Yeah, and what happens in these regions, man, and I'm gonna get to all that in a minute if you don't mind. I know I'm probably talking a lot more than I should, but these different regions, you're gonna see the same song and dance. You're gonna see highly magnetically anomalous areas on these maps. You're gonna see where essentially what happens with. It's funny because I mentioned this on the Confessionals, which is the first podcast I ever done. And I was saying it without really even knowing what I was talking about. I was like, these tectonic plates push up against Earth and they create these mountains and all this, right? And it's like, now I'm looking back through some of this data, and I was actually kind of right with some of this. But what happens on these coastlines, especially of like South Carolina and Vermont and New Hampshire and those kind of places, is that they're formed from tectonic plates, right? I mean, all the mountains and stuff in the Appalachian regions, wasn't that part of some kind of a tectonic plate merger? Or something
and that's like Dr. Watt Brown. I talk about him any chance I get because people that's not been exposed to that dude needs to be exposed to that. But he had this theory called, he was a NASA engineer. He was a Christian, but he called it hydroplate theory. And he talked about not tectonic plates. It's the scar line under Oceanic Ridge. Oceanic Ridge. Yep. It's basically like a scar line. It's like a seam on a baseball that runs around the entire globe. And what's crazy is they almost mirror the coastlines. Not quite, but almost do. But what they do mirror without fail 100% of the time is if you look at, Google, the Oceanic Ridges, and look and compare those to all the major mountain ranges in the world, they are completely identical.
Yeah.
The curves, everything, they're completely parallel. And he says that's because he believes everything was like a supercontinent, like Pangea.
Yeah, I do too.
And then this event happened, and it made the tectonic plates push apart and spread these continents apart. He said, and all the plates moving made magma stir up, made the volcanoes erupt across the globe, darkening the skies, lowering the temperatures, bringing on the first ice age. Very, very great and well-researched theory. To me, it answered a lot of stuff, even like the pelts on the moon on the near side. He said that's because of this event. He said because the Bible says the waters from the above came down, but also the waters from the abyss burst forth. He said that's what caused that scar and that pushing. He said, but all that debris that flew up left our atmosphere and pelted the moon. That's why you have all these huge craters only on the near side of the moon because of that event.
He's 100% right, in my opinion. I'm not, honestly, man, I know I probably sound like I'm just talking, fishing for compliments or something, but like, I'm not smart enough to be at that level yet. I'm still kind of discovering some things, and I'm trying to connect the dots. But it's funny you mentioned the Oceanic Ridge, right? It's like, well, this ties into the story of the Lizard Man. So on June 29th, 1988, about 2 a.m., there was a guy named Christopher Davis. He's 17 at the time. He's driving home from a McDonald's shift. He's working late shift at McDonald's, and he's driving home late. And he gets on this road called Browntown Road, which I got a little video on my Instagram if you want to actually see Browntown Road and Skateboard Swamp. You can check that out. But
does those road signs ever disappear? Just asking for a friend.
Did they disappear? No. No, there's a sign there. You can go. Yeah, you can go take a sign probably. I don't recommend it, but
Browntown, baby.
So there's your name, Browntown. That's right.
Yeah.
So there's a place called Browntown, which is where him and his family are from. So he's driving home through the swamp, through Skateboard Swamp, to get to his house. And by the way, that's a putrid smelling place for whatever reason. I don't know what's going on there. Now, they're in Bishopville, South Carolina, which is the town that Browntown is in. So it's like a little community within Bishopville. There is a major landfill there. So there's part of that. But there's something else about Browntown when you're driving through there.
Sulfur water or something.
I don't know what it is. Maybe sulfur water, but it's made me gag the whole time when I was there. So I guess people who live there are just probably used to it. I don't know, but
Nose blind.
Yeah. But he was driving through Browntown Road back to Browntown, and he goes through the swamp, and he gets a flat tire, pulls over to this shoulder of the road near the swamp, on the swamp side of it, to change it. While he's changing the tire, he hears these rapid, heavy running footsteps approaching him from the swamp side. And he turns to see a large upright figure coming at him from the swamp. And he describes this figure as a reptilian humanoid that is about 7 feet tall. It's upright, it's bipedal. It has green, scaly skin, a glossy, wet appearance, red glowing eyes, and the creature has these long arms and 3 toes on each foot. And that's the important part of the story, 3 toes on each foot. So obviously he panics. I mean, I would too. If I seen a giant lizard man coming running at me, he panics. He jumps in his car. He abandons the tire change with the tire half on. He drives off, and he reports that the creature charged at him, jumps on the vehicle on the roof of the car, starts rocking the car, and he drives as fast as he can straight to the police department, right? And he reports it to the police, and they just thought he was crazy because it's like that. It's like that in small towns, right? When you grow up in a small town, like me, I grew up in a town of 1,000 people. They know me. Yeah. They know my family. And so if I was to say, oh, I saw something, oh, that's one of them Lail boys. You know, he's just, you know how them Lails are, kind of crazy, right? You know, that's how people do. And so that's how they were taking it with this kid, Christopher Davis, who I don't know if he was a troublemaker at the time, but I guess the region just kind of knows.
That old boy's on dope.
Yeah. Well, later on in life, he died from a drug-related incident. So that should probably tell you. But I think that might have been from the burden of being...
the trauma.
Yeah, like, because literally, he goes and reports this, man, and he reports it to police, and they didn't really believe it, right? They go out and they examine the car, and they see all these deep scratches on the body panels, and there were these dents that were... they weren't brush damage, or there wasn't a car accident, and they could see like missing or torn exterior trim. There was damage near the mirrors and the roof line. So when the deputies examined this, they were like, okay, well, something definitely is not natural that caused this. It wasn't like a car accident. So
it was a mad ex-girlfriend.
Yeah. So they kind of started to believe the story. The reason they eventually started to believe the story fully was because he took a lie detector test and it determined he was telling the truth.
Like the Travis Walton story.
Yep.
They didn't believe him neither, and they had to take a lie detector.
Yeah, and so they go back and they search the area where he was, and they find these footprints, and they make these plaster castings or whatever they are of the footprints, which is still found in the museum. You can go to the museum, I believe it's the Cotton Museum in Bishopville, and you can see those plaster casts that were made. They took photographs, they documented it and everything. So this is like another well-documented story.
And shout out to, I don't mean to interrupt you, but I'll forget if I don't, but shout out to Harley Owens. He's a good buddy of mine and Bigfoot researcher, but he has found and took lots of pictures and stuff of them out in some of his research areas, 3 toed prints, but they're way too large to be, like a turkey, or a chicken, because, turkey tracks look like that. But it's like that, but it's got a heel coming down, and they're huge. I mean, they're like prints this big. So kind of correlates and sounds the same.
Oh, it is, man. I believe, listen, there's people who are into paranormal. I don't have to watch or listen to paranormal shows anymore. I just know that they're telling the truth. There's thousands and millions of cases. You can go to the National UFO Reporting Center website, and literally see thousands of reported with pictures, with videos, with reports that you can literally look through and see firsthand. So the fact that when they do these disclosure briefings in Congress, they're not even accessing those. They're not even pulling from those files. They're hand picking a couple of gimbal video or whatever, Commander David Lefravor or whatever, and they're talking about this video. There are thousands and thousands of high definition pictures and videos where you can look at some of this stuff yourself. So I believe paranormal stuff. There's there's no more need to convince me. I mean, I think everybody would love to have a Bigfoot in on a stretcher and you show them off to everybody or whatever, but I think at this point, I just believe them, because they're telling the truth. But these things are not normal. They're paranormal. And so, of course, they're going to be able to affect our minds because our minds are electric, like I said. And so, like, if they can affect electromagnetic energy, they can affect your brain because it's kind of like this hard drive. And they can sort of fragment your hard drive, So with this story, though, man, it's very important to note that Christopher Davis, from 1988 when this happened until 2009, he never once went on History Channel or A&E or any of these things, and he was offered lots of money to go on these shows and talk about this, but he never once took, and I think that says a lot, actually. Yes, that says a lot about what he went through. Because if it was a hoax, you could just keep milking it for the rest of your life and think about the speaking money you would get going to speak at these conferences and all this stuff. And so he would have had a life that was filled with money and fame in some way, rather than kind of like how Travis
didn't want to
Walton
relive
does,
it.
Right? What's that?
He just didn't want to relive it, over and over.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. And he ended up dying. He was, I would assume, a drug addict. He died from a drug-related incident where he was shot. So I think that there was probably a lot of trauma there that was kind of left over. But man, this whole area, talking about. Sorry, I'm gonna pull this up real quick. I want to talk about the environmental profile real quick of it.
Yeah, I was about to ask if you had another image,
Yes.
like overlaying, like you did the other.
Yes, I do, and I'll show you that real quick if you want me to. I'll share the screen with you, and I'll give you a better look. There's actually a couple different images I want to show in this particular one. So this is the aeromagnetic map of South Carolina, and you can see. I'll show you a couple of hot spots real quick.
A lot of pink.
A lot of pink. Well, off the coast of South Carolina, about 500 to 900 miles away, is Bermuda Island. Like right off the coast of Charleston, if you just drive straight east, or get on a boat and go straight east, you're gonna run into Bermuda Island. And so you can see in the ocean, if you can see my mouse, you can see in the ocean there's a lot of magnetic anomalies in the ocean as well, and that continues over into the Bermuda Triangle. Which, by the way, if you wanted a copy of this aeromagnetic map of Bermuda Triangle, you can't get it online. It's in archives somewhere. It's kind of buried, so you can't find that information, which I'm sure you would see a lot of pink, essentially. So, all right. So without further delay, I'll just go ahead and
Well, that's weird. I mean, why the hell would they not share that with the public?
Well, they did it in 1947. A lot of these maps were done in 1947, and some of them a little bit later. But all this kind of, again, 1947 geostorm, the solar cycle, the solar maximum that happened, caused the Great Panic. And so this is why they started taking aeromagnetic and gravity map pictures, scans of Earth back then, was because they were like, okay, let's find out where these regions are. So I'll show you, I don't remember the exact area, but I'll just go ahead and drag the transparency. So, okay. Can you see that heart?
Yeah.
So that heart is where the Scapewar Swamp is. Oh, I got the maps mixed up.
Okay. So a lot of blue.
No, that's not it, actually. It's supposed to be down here. I got it shifted or something. But it essentially is overlaying on this pink area as well. And then I'll show you another thing. You talked about the oceanic ridge. Well, check this out. So this is a fault map of South Carolina. I hope this one didn't shift too, but let me just show you what it looks like whenever I shift the transparency. Oh man, this thing is messed up. When I shift the transparency on this map, check this out. So you see that little fork? That's a fault.
Yeah.
That's a major fault line. Okay, all these are fault lines. These little hearts down here is where I'm from. A lot of paranormal activity there as well. This is
That's like right on the intersection. Looks like the two big ones.
It is, yeah. So what also is happening is you have a river called the Black River there as well. And this Black River has magnetite in the sands. That's why they call them black sands, is because they have magnetite in them. It's I showed you that there's a fork, a fault line fork where I grew up too. And so there's a lot of paranormal activity there as well. And there's another line. I had a guy that might be coming on my show. He called me. He's a former sheriff. And he said, I've been listening to you. I love what you have to say. He used to be a sheriff in the region I grew up in. And he said, what you're talking about helps explain supernaturally a weird thing that happened back in the 90s when he was the sheriff. He said they had this area that they called the line of death, where all these very strange things had happened to people, kids who'd gone missing. There was demonic circles and stuff they would find, and there was a lot of just strange activity. But they ended up calling it the line of death. And when you line up that the fault line map with that, you literally see a fault line that is right where that line of death is, where he was talking about. So, very interesting, man. There's a river that flows through. It's called the Black River in Bishopville. And then you got swamps, and then you got creeks, and you got all this stuff that's there. You got natural springs that are there as well. So again, all of these, you're going to always find those elements when there's a paranormal thing happening. You can almost, in fact, my cousin was telling me a paranormal story, and I said, were you around water? She said, no. I said, were you around a lot of like power lines, like a substation? She goes, yes, I was right underneath one. And I said, so anytime there's changes in the electromagnetic field, because remember, electricity produces a magnetic field, and magnetic fields produce electricity. They go hand in hand. That's why they're called electromagnetic. So one produces the other, affects the other, that kind of stuff. So it's safe to say, I think, that even substations create these paranormal effects. Whenever I was living, we were building our house, and we were living in an apartment while we built our house, and it was literally right beside a substation. And I always had the weirdest feelings there all the time. I would walk my dogs, and I would get these weird hot spots on me all the time, just out of nowhere. And it felt very eerie. It felt like it was like I was looking at these apartments, and I would look at these windows that had like a blue light on or a purple light, somebody playing Xbox in their room or whatever it is. And it gave me this very deep, eerie feeling. And there's just always a lot of weird feelings and paranormal type things that are happening, whether consciously or subconsciously or reality, I don't know, but there seems to be a heavy connection with that stuff as well. So yeah, all those fault lines were created from these shifting tectonic plates which are pushing up against, and they're constantly creating these folds of magnetic, like magnetite, essentially. Now, when you think about fault lines, the fault lines are basically like these empty river systems that exist within Earth. And they're dried riverbeds within Earth. And they're like basically lined with magnetite. Think about like magnetite as their walls or whatever. And so anytime there's any kind of shifting activity, maybe it's electrical currents or whatever, that magnetite easily falls and crumbles and creates another little magnetic effect. So you got flowing water, you got magnetic fault lines underneath, you got paranormal activity, because around this time, another solar maximum whenever this happened to Christopher Davis. So you got all these, it creates a perfect storm of electromagnetic activity that creates almost like these little portal. Think about it like a geodynamo, like in the Earth's core, you have a constant whirring, a constant massaging, if you will, that creates a geodynamic effect, which causes magnetic fields, if you will. And on the Earth's surface, when you got flowing water, you know how you see like a whirlpool in a river or something like that? That is the same effect on the surface level. So the geodynamo inside of Earth is creating this magnetic field by this constant whirring, it's constant like rolling, if you will. And then that is happening on the Earth's surface as well with flowing water, with spring water when it's coming up naturally, like what's going on in this area where Bishopville is. There's lots of spring water. It's within the Lee State National Park, the Lee State Park. State parks, just like national parks, are highly protected for those kinds of reasons. And it's not very far, within like 20 miles away from the Francis Marion National Forest, and which is also the Francis Marion / Sumter National Forest. Another protected area by the governments, whether that be state or federal, that's protecting these areas for a specific reason. You're going to see stuff like wildlife refugee area or reservation or national park or state park that is going to be protecting us from these highly paranormal areas. And so I think that's why they don't want us to go in a lot of these places. Now, they let us go camp there and all this, but we don't have regular interactions, and there's a lot of rules. You can't have drones. You can't do a lot of things. You can't just go dig and explore like you want to, because I think that they know that any kind of digging could cause some sort of a radiation release, or it can cause some sort of a magnetic field interruption that causes, these portals to keep opening. So I think that that's why these state parks are really protected, and these national parks are really protected. So, but yeah, that's an interesting story, man. And I would bet that you could do that with Mothman as well. You could probably do an environmental. Maybe I will, because it's another one of those stories that people really like to hear. But everybody has heard the story. They just don't look any further. What was the weather like that night? Was it raining? Was it a thunderstorm? What was it? You mentioned the EMPs earlier, right? What happens is in the ionosphere, there's a buildup of energy. It stores in almost like a cloud of energy that stores in the atmosphere. And it has to release that energy. If it can't handle it, it'll release it. And what it does is it shoots lightning almost to the Earth's crust and causes that poof, that EMP. So anytime you have thunderstorms or anything like that, there's a lot of that changing magnetic field stuff as well. And so you're going to get a lot of paranormal activity stuff during weird weather, which is what, especially precipitous weather, like David Paulides talks about in Missing 411. But I think that we're not looking at some of these paranormal areas through a new lens. We're just taking what people tell us. It's almost like gatekeepers of information. We're always going to hear the Mothman story. We're always going to hear the Lizard Man story or the Travis Walton abduction. But we're not going to hear the other elements of like, what is the weather like? Is it raining? Was there a solar storm that happened? Like all this stuff that needs to go on. What does the Department of Interior say about this region? What does the USGS maps say? And I think it's a very important thing to do is to look at those areas. And again, I mean, I guess we won't have a lot of time to get into the Travis Walton thing, but he was abducted in like the 1970s in the Sitgreaves National Forest. And if you want to do this yourself, you're more than welcome. Go to Google Maps, take a screenshot of Sitgreaves, or take a screenshot of Arizona, the state of Arizona on Google Maps, put a marker on Sitgreaves National Forest, and then go overlay a USGS aeromagnetic and gravity map over the top of it, and you'll see it aligns perfectly with the hot pink area. And it also is in a reservation. It's in a national forest. It's in a wildlife reserve. And so there's a lot of these things that you can create a whole profile. And I am kind of trying to do that. I'm trying to build a profile on these different cases. And you can see some similarities. So if you're a paranormal investigator, again, you can almost map these out perfectly. You can go at dusk or dawn. You could go to one of these highly paranormal regions, these magnetically anomalous regions, and you could do these, put yourself in a better position to hunt for these kind of things, to maybe catch a glimpse of Bigfoot or have some kind of a paranormal activity happen to you. So again, I don't recommend interacting with these forces, because I do think that even though the Nephilim are technically the demons that are wandering the earth, I think that these are all negative energies. They're all bad energies. They're all demons in some way. So I don't think they have a good agenda. If they did, why wouldn't they stop wars? Why wouldn't they stop the Epstein stuff? Why wouldn't they come out and just tell us all the secrets of the world and give us all this highly advanced technology and all this other stuff? Well, it's because they are nefarious. They are demonic. And I think that people need to be careful when they're out in the woods hunting for this stuff, because I think some of these things, these entities can attach themselves to you if you're not careful. So.
Yeah, and I like how you said earlier too. These are prisoners on their yard time, so
Yeah.
these are not malevolent beings.
Yeah, and there's tons of scripture that points to this stuff. I mean, you guys can look this up as well. And I'm gonna try to venture out into this. I'm just not as well versed on the Bible, but there are a lot of scripture where Jesus saw Satan fall like lightning from heaven, which is plasma. There's a lot of reference to stars. There's a lot of references to clouds and things like that. And I think that we have to look at the Bible through a supernatural lens like that too. We can't just say, like, when it says God is light, I think it literally means God is light, but people take that as allegorical. But I don't think that we should take that allegorical. I think we should look at it from a supernatural lens and say that God is light. God created the light, and he also created the darkness. So he was a creator for both things, and he made us in his image. So we are light beings in that way as well. So when we say God is light, I think we're literally talking about God as light. But biblically, we haven't been looking at it like that our whole lives. I went to church my whole life. I never heard anybody talk about stars or lightning or anything like that, and sort of tear it down and break it down a little bit and try to explain that in any way. They just say, oh, well, it's stars, it's lightning. So, okay, well, what about it? How can we expand upon that? I mean, shouldn't we know who our enemy is? Shouldn't we know what time of day they're coming in? We need to know all about our enemies if they are the darkness. We need to know everything about them. And we just aren't taught anything about them. And so that's really kind of my goal here, is to try to bring or shed some light into some of these topics that nobody else is wanting to touch on. Because whether we like to believe it or not, there are people who are worshiping this dark matter. They're, like the Epstein files revealed, he talked about dark matter. And he talks about humans as biological waste, essentially, for this dark matter. And so you really have to examine the enemy when it comes to this stuff. I go to church and I still don't hear anybody saying, like, how do we fight the bad guy? You know, we all admit that there's bad going on, but how do we fight the bad guy? And yeah, you fight the bad guy with the word, right? But also, I think we need to learn a little bit more than that. I think we need to know a little bit more about the darkness. There's a book I just started reading called A Science of Subtle Energy or something like that. I can't remember the name of the book, but it is essentially, it's called The Science of Subtle Energy. And it makes a case for dark matter as the creator of this universe. And that's what they believe. If the dark matter makes up 99% of the universe, well, it must be the creator. And it's like, that's how they view things. They look at people as biological waste in this bigger system. And this is why you have CERN celebrating Dark Matter Day. And respectfully to people who are Catholic, this is why All Souls Day exists in Catholicism. It starts October 31st. Dark Matter Day is October 31st. It starts the dark half of the season, the dark half of the year. You make your offerings, and they provide you with the harvest. So they provide you with all the stuff you'll need to get through the dark season. And so I think they're... Yep,
that's something it's archaic.
Yes.
You know, you look back through time, and the Mathones down there in Sardinia, they dress up in black fur and wooden masks and have fires and all that kind of stuff. I mean, it was
they still
even
do
just
it.
on a, yeah, but even just on a, not even a spiritual level, just a, well, I guess it is kind of spiritual even in this aspect, but just fleshly part of it. It's like, no, these are our crops, these are our goods, and we need these to survive. So therefore, we have to thwart off this darkness to, you know, to get us through back to the warm and sunny days.
Yeah, which starts when you told me about this. Beltane starts May 1st, right? So the
May
dark
1st,
half of the
yeah.
season ends on Beltane, and these are all pagan holidays, man. And I think it's hard to ignore pagan influence in the world we live in. It's a pretty blatant, if you ask me. I think Canaanites still exist. I think that these people still make their sacrifices on their altars. And funny, because Topher Gardner had a great article on his Substack where he's talking about altars and how when you make a sacrifice on the altar, you alter reality. So altar is a homophone for altering reality. So when you make sacrifice, you can alter reality in some way for your benefit or whatever. I don't know. So
Yeah, it's pretty wild. Oh, Topher, I like him a lot. He's definitely out of the box, and he sees things from a different perspective than a lot of people in this space. And where he's an engineer, a creator himself, he has just really good perspectives. I love talking to him and seeing what he has to say on things. And honestly, I just love that I follow him because all the cool stuff he's doing, making these huge, what does he call them? These rocket heaters, and using it to heat the porcelain of his bathtub. That way, his water always stays warm, and the domes, and he's always just making some cool stuff, man.
Well, he spends a lot of time with God in nature. We don't do that enough, I don't think.
Yeah.
I mean, we go to church and we get read the Bible and we get a little taste of God, but God is out there every day that you can go take your shoes off and experience God. You can feel him. You can interact with him. You can have all these great experiences that you can't get just by studying. It's like you can tell somebody what a baseball game is like. You can describe it to them in a book, but they don't know what the baseball game is like until they go and experience the wave, or somebody hits a walk-off home run in the bottom of the ninth to win the game to take them to, the World Series or whatever it is. You can't experience that feeling that you get when you're at a place like that because because God's presence is there in a way that you can't get from the pages of a book, And I think that Topher has this ability to dissect a lot of things because he interacts with God on a regular basis. So,
Yep. Man, well, brother, I appreciate you coming and sharing all this stuff. Man, this was mind-blowing to me, and I love looking at it through this, and using these scientific terms and instruments and technology that we got to basically to reaffirm stuff that we already thought and believed. So once again, I think it kind of shows what I said kind of near the front of the show. There doesn't have to be a hard line between faith and science. They correlate and they go hand in hand.
I mean, I think so too. I think JT was telling me one time about ancient geometry, and he said that it's just, it's got a nasty connotation to it. It's kind of a perverted word, but that's because the devil took that word and made it, he took God's creation of geometry and said, that's mine, and started calling it whatever.
That's what he always does.
Yeah, so that's what I'm saying. And so we can take those words back. It's like the rainbow, right? You can take, not to get political or anything, but the rainbow meant something different than what it means now. And they've taken that word from us. We can take the word back to where the word rainbow is not a dirtied word tied into something else. And so, but we just have to be brave enough and men enough to stand our ground with a lot of this stuff, and we just haven't been as manly as we should lately. But I can feel it coming. I can feel a rise in that masculinity to basically go out there and make disciples of all men. So I think that's what we're doing on these shows. I mean, I'm not doing it in the best possible way, but I hope I'm trying to shed some light on some of the dark stuff that's going on, and also bring people closer to Christ as well.
Oh yeah, I mean, we all have our roles to play, and we're doing what we need to do in our own way. I tell people all the time, there's many people, and many people like different flavors of ice cream. So if everybody's vanilla, not everybody's going to get a taste. And so my analogy, that's Christ, the gospel, ice cream. So therefore you need to present it in a palpable flavor for all the peoples. So that's why it's important that we do what we do, man. And I appreciate what you do. There's plenty of people that will poo-poo on your certain flavor, even me included. So, I mean, you're not everybody's taste. So you don't try to please everyone. You are here and made the way you are because there's people out there that enjoy your flavor. So be your flavor, man. But man, if anybody wasn't paying attention at the beginning of the show or anything like that, man, I just want to make sure they know where to find you if they don't know already. But before we go, man, just let everybody know where they can find you and support you the most, Brad.
Well, again, thank you for having me on your platform. You're one of my closest friends in this podcasting game. You're one of the real ones. A lot of times people don't realize that there is, a lot of infighting in podcasting, which is kind of crazy because it seems like everybody's got the same mission, so it shouldn't be like that. Yeah. But you're one of the real ones, man, and I appreciate everything you do. And getting your own flavor out there as well is very important. And, you guys can find me at theawakenedpodcast.com. That's my website. I encourage everybody to go there because how it works in the search engine world, in the marketing world, is that when you go to a Facebook page or you go to a link tree or you go to an Instagram page or whatever, you're giving all of your link access, you're getting all of those clicks to all of those companies. And so if you can get more, if I can get more clicks to my website, I would appreciate that versus going to say like a link tree or something. But I do have my own made up link tree on my website that you can find on my website if you want to browse. And I think it says link in bio at the bottom of my page. I also just started creating some t-shirts, and I have a Lizard Man t-shirt out there if you guys want to buy a Lizard Man t-shirt. Not trying to do much with it. I'm just trying to get some stuff out there for you guys to some stickers and stuff like that, just to interact with y'all in some way, because all the people who listen to my show have been amazing and very open-minded and not very critical. And so I appreciate everybody who comes over from your show to listen to mine as well. And and I encourage everybody who listened to this show today, please give us a 5-star review. Those 5-star reviews really help us out on Spotify, and they help us out on Apple, because it tells potential guests that we're serious podcasters, and also it helps us get around the algorithms. Like a lot of times algorithms will bury you, but it's hard for the algorithms to ignore you when people are commenting on your show and they're liking your show, they're following your show, and they're also giving 5-star reviews. Because when you do that, you're telling these organizations, I want to see that. And they have to do it because you're their customer. Especially on Spotify if you're paying. So if they're not giving you what you want, then they're not doing well as a company. So if you don't mind, follow me over there. I am on I'm on Instagram at The Awakened Pod. I'm also on Patreon at The Awakened Pod, and on YouTube now. I'm uploading videos to YouTube at The Awakened Pod. So please be sure to follow me over there. And Doc, thanks again, man. You're the man, dude. I appreciate everything you're doing.
No, man, I love you, brother, man. You are, my circle is very small. I try to tell people it's not because I'm so unpleasant. It's just I keep the quality over the quantity, man. So you are in that circle of trust, fucker. You remember that movie? Yeah. You violated the circle of trust, fucker. You are in the circle of trust.
I'm honored to be there.
But man, yeah, man, but I love you, dude. You're doing great, and you keep doing what you're doing. You keep being you. Don't bow to the pressure and the Pharisees. I made a disclaimer at the very beginning of my show for those people. I try to run them off as quickly as possible. Warning to the Pharisees and Karens out there. But yeah, guys, yeah, definitely take the time to give those 5-star reviews, because that's something that I can even relate with. I got about 6,000 followers on both platforms, and I got less than 300 reviews on both platforms.
Yes, sir.
So help us out, man. If y'all listen to our stuff, you enjoy our stuff, you're listening every week, man, seriously, take 30 seconds of your time and give us a review. That way we can keep doing what we're doing and keep serving you intellectual goodness every week. Well, guys, man, I hope you enjoyed that. Be sure to check out Brad's stuff. Like he said, he's one of the real ones, man. But yeah, the websites, the reviews, all the things, that is the podcast currency. And when you guys do that, man, we definitely appreciate it. So be sure and do that, man. Hey, guys, the difference between the known and the unknown is the journey. So good journey, guys.